Magandang araw mga kaproyekto. Welcome to Proyekto Pilipino. Ngayon po, meron tayong isang napakatahimik na issue, pero napakahalagang issue kasi ito ho yung mga issue na baka mabulaga na lang tayo. Ano po? Kaya ngayong araw ay tayo ho'y nagpapasalamat na balikbayan actually si Dr. Edsel Salvania, no, na naging lalo na nung panahon ng pandemya, madalas natin siyang konsultahin. So welcome po Dr. Edsel, welcome Manolo sa ating topic ngayong araw tungkol po sa health emergency sa Pilipinas na ukol sa HIV. So welcome Manolo, welcome Dr. Edsel.
Thanks,
Thank you
Mark.
very much.
Doc, we wanted to start kasi yung topic natin today is HIV/AIDS sa Pilipinas at maraming naaabala dahil sa kanilang pananaw, kailangan magdeklara ang pamahalaan ng isang health emergency. Sa aming pagkakaintindi, ang dahilan dito, um, biglang tumaas ng napakalaki ang insidente ng HIV infection sa Pilipinas. In my understanding, ayon sa World Health Organization, a 550% increase sa mga bagong infection between 2010 and 2024. Ang sakop dito, karamihan mga Filipino men ages 15 to 24. And ito ang isa sa pinakamataas na pagtaas ng insidente sa buong daigdig. So, Doc, maybe we can start with the super basics. Because up to now, besides the stigma, maraming ding scientific ignorance. Ano ang HIV? Ano ang AIDS? Ano ang connection nito sa isa't isa?
Yeah. So, ang HIV po stands for Human Immunodeficiency Virus. Ito po ay isang virus na nagta-target po ng ating immune system, specifically yung tinatawag na CD4 cells na essential po talaga sa ating katawan para maprotektahan tayo against mga viruses, mga bacteria. Unang nakita po ito around 1982 po, na-discover po siya. Pero actually kumakalat na siya sa Africa ng matagal. In fact, the estimate right now is there are more than 20 million cases of HIV in sub-Saharan Africa. Dito sa Pilipinas, estimate mga 250,000. Sa Thailand, 1 million. Sa US, 1 million. Sa Brazil, 1 million. So, centered po talaga ito sa sub-Saharan Africa kung saan nanggaling yung virus. The virus actually is what we call a zoonotic virus. Ibig sabihin nanggaling siya, they think from apes. And hindi lang isang beses nag-jump ang HIV from apes to humans. In fact, at least 5 times yan. Kasi meron tayong makikita, pag titingnan mo yung genetic makeup ng virus, meron tayong tinatawag na HIV-1, may HIV-2, at dun sa HIV-1, merong group M, group N, group O, group P. So yung limang yon are the known major kinds of HIV in the world, and they actually all came from apes and monkeys. In fact, yung isa gorilla, yung isa chimpanzee, yung isa green monkey, sooty mangabe. But ang important is, whatever happened is naka-cross siya to humans, and then it started to spread, and a lot of people got infected, and ang nangyari is, as the virus stays in your body, pahina ng pahina ang iyong immune system. Pag umabot sa level na sobrang baba na talaga siya, na nagkakaroon ka na nung tinatawag natin ng opportunistic infections, yun yung point na tatawagin siyang AIDS. So, lahat ng taong may AIDS have HIV, but not everyone who has HIV has AIDS. So, ang AIDS is actually end-stage HIV, very advanced HIV, na if ma-diagnose ka na may AIDS ka na, if you don't start treatment, mamamatay ka in about 6 months to 1 year.
Okay, ngayon,
Okay.
from what you said, mukhang malinaw na ang incidence of HIV/AIDS sa Pilipinas ay medyo mababa pa rin. You were saying about 100,000 or so, 200,000 ang
Yeah,
knows
250,000 total. So,
out of a population of over 100 million. But it may be a relatively small number, ngunit biglang umaakyat ito. So that leads us to my next two questions. Yung isang datos na binanggit din ng World Health Organization is more or less on an average, 57 Filipinos are diagnosed with HIV every day. So sa akin, the first logical question is, are more people getting HIV or are we getting better at diagnosing it and therefore getting a better picture?
So kung titingnan natin yung history ng HIV sa Pilipinas, the first 2 cases of HIV were diagnosed in 1984. And until 2009, we had less than 1 case a day na being reported. Of course, konti lang rin yung nagpapatest. But in general, kasi lalabas at lalabas yan lalo na sa mga employment screens going abroad. Dito sa Pilipinas, bawal yan. You can't use HIV to test your employees. Pero syempre, kung seafarers natin, mga nurses natin, mga mag-i-immigrate, lalabas at lalabas yan. And of course, yung mga AIDS or end-stage HIV, they'll show up in our hospitals. Full-blown yan kasi hindi mo naman may ignore yon. So I'll tell you, I was a medical student from 1995 to 2001. And in PGH, buong 5 years na nasa PGH ako, I saw only 2 cases of HIV. And so that's a really small number kasi National Referral Center yan Then I went to the United States from 2002 to 2008. I trained in infectious disease. I saw more HIV there. Tapos bumalik ako 2008 and I joined PGH. And nagulat ako kasi at that time, ang report was still mga 1 case a day. Pero ang nakikita ako sa wards, ang daming young men who had advanced pneumocystis pneumonia, very bad tuberculosis, Cryptococcus meningitis. These are all opportunistic infections. So sabi ko, something's going on. I took care of HIV cases while I was in the United States. So I recognized them agad. And I said, we really have to do something about this. And so from 1984 hanggang 2006, I think if you look at the numbers, low and slow talaga ang HIV sa Pilipinas. And nobody really knew why. People were looking for, are we immune? Are people not having sex? Well, first of all, I want to dispel that notion na we're not having sex. Number 1, ang taas ng birth rate natin, di ba? And number 2, and this is really important, if you compare the sexually transmitted infection rates of the Philippines to the other people in the region, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, kapareho lang. In other words, it's not because we have less sex. We're having just as much sex as everyone else. But for some reason, mababa yung cases ng HIV in the Philippines. Now, why is that? In fact, mga professors ko, ano ba nangyayari sa Pilipinas? Yung sa Amerika, but ganon. That answer is, later on, we found out, we just got lucky. In other words, so number 1, mataas ang circumcision rate natin. And it's interesting na before 2009, before 2006 actually, there were equal numbers of men who have sex with men and female to male or heterosexual cases of HIV. But at some point, nag-shift siya to 80-90% men who have sex with men. So a circumcised heterosexual man actually has a lower risk of getting HIV than somebody who's uncircumcised. And they've seen this in Africa to the point na they said one of the ways to prevent HIV is actually to circumcise people. Because if you're circumcised, there's actually fewer target cells on the penis for some reason. And so what that means is may protective effect yon sa atin. So that's 1. So number 2, yung nakuha nating HIV in the Philippines is subtype B, which is what we see in the United States, in Europe, and it's relatively, it's middle tier. Kumbaga, pag-uusapan mo yung COVID, di ba? Merong Delta na sobrang grabe, and then there's just the regular variant. So yung B is a regular variant. And then sometime in 2006, 2007, 2008, nakapasok dito yung tinatawag natin na HIV subtype CRFAE, which is a recombinant that originated from Thailand, and it's much more virulent. So nag-take over yung subtype. At the same time, nakapasok ito sa ating MSM population, and then ito na, nakita na natin na nag-shift na talaga. We had a more infectious and more virulent virus taking over from the indolent one, and it got into the sexual networks of the men who have sex with men who, have more partners in general, and we checked that, and it's true. So nag-spread na talaga siya. And we were only starting to get people on proper treatment And so it was kind of like a perfect storm. And so we had this spike of cases that started 2006. You can see it, paakyat ng paakyat yan eh. And then all the way up to the pandemic in 2020, tuloy-tuloy, every year on year, there was a continued increase in the number of HIV cases. It dropped during the pandemic because number one, wala nagpapatest. Yeah, but we weren't fooled because when we opened up again, all of a sudden, all these patients were off meds. Kasi if you're on meds, hindi ka halos nakaka-transmit eh. But all these people missed their appointments and everything. And then nakita ko na naman parang nasa 2009 na naman ako sa PGH. There were all these young people who got sick with opportunistic infections, and now we're having to put them back on meds. So the bottom line is, this is not actually new, itong increase. It's been going on since 2006. We started to see it come to a head around 2009. We started campaigning for it. In fact, it was Secretary Esperanza Cabral back in 2010 when we were doing these campaigns na nag-declare siya na merong emergency epidemic ng HIV sa Pilipinas. And after that, we were really pushing. And it's actually gotten a lot better in terms of treatment, which is free, and we have very good treatment. So to answer your question about the increased testing, yes, there's increased testing, most definitely. We're doing more tests now than ever. Pero yung absolute increase, siguro yung contribution ng increased testing is about 10-15%. But the vast majority of new cases that we're seeing now, these are real new cases. And how do we know that? Because if we look at the percentage of people that we estimate have not been diagnosed, kasi dun sa 250,000, only about 50-60% of those we actually diagnosed. And looking at the models, hanggang ngayon, we still haven't found 40-50% of people with HIV. So while there is increased testing, the vast majority of these cases are actual increase in the number of cases overall.
Okay, I wanted to zero in on one thing, which was I noticed na bahagi ng sakop ng increase ng HIV incidence ngayon are very young. And we can attribute that to many things, ignorance and that sort of thing. But I wanted to zero in on the effect of the pandemic. Dahil people were out of school, there was no opportunity for education. Is this something that you guys have zeroed in on? Can we say there was an effect? You already mentioned one, na yung those who were on maintenance medicines for HIV treatment, yung iba sa kanila, lost their access to their maintenance medicines, and therefore they became able to transmit again. That's for those who are already carriers. What about for young people in general?
Yeah, so one of the problems talaga for HIV is if we don't find them early, there's two bad effects. Number one is it gets harder to recover your life years when you start treatment. The second is, while they're not on treatment and they're not suppressing their virus, they're able to transmit to more people. So, dalawa yung effect ng delayed diagnosis. There's a personal effect and there's a public health effect. So, ang nangyari was, like I said, tumataas talaga yung number of cases naman since 2009. We were starting to see a slowdown in the increase every year. And then the pandemic hit. So, double whammy yun. Number one is people can't get tested and then they can't access care. And number two is the people who are already on treatment suddenly now have virus again. And if they have sexual partners, they can start to transmit it. May number three pa doon na hindi masyadong napapansin is if you're on treatment and you stop treatment, you might end up with drug-resistant virus that you can also transmit to other people. That's a concern for me because HIV mutates so fast that if you don't take your meds regularly, the virus will become resistant to it. And that's yet another piece of fallout that we're dealing with. But going to your question about whether there's There's decreased education, human sexuality education. Well, I think that was counteracted by the fact that people couldn't go out at all. So they couldn't hook up. So,
Yeah.
in that sense, baka na-neutralize yun. Pero once we opened up, ito na. You have
Nawala
a
na.
bad situation because people are off meds, mataas ang viral loads, and then people are, parang, di ba parang revenge travel? I guess meron rin ganun sa, in terms of hooking up. And with all these things going on, sumipa lalo. So it started to go back up again.
But let me zero in on an important thing you said, which I think sets apart the HIV discussion from past decades. It's not necessarily the death sentence it used to be,
Yeah.
because the medicines have become very effective in many ways to really prolong, and you can have in many ways a normal life for many decades now, no? If you have access to the medicines.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely right. We've gone, this it's to the point where HIV is now a chronic illness. If you can give this one pill once a day and you suppress the virus, we've had antiretrovirals available since 1996, but a lot of them were really toxic, really hard to take. There was one time you had to take 20 pills every 4 hours. That's why see Freddie Mercury, he actually stopped taking medicine because it was making him sicker, because we only had IV Zidovudine at that time. Now it's a 3-in-1 pill that you take once a day. And if you start treatment before you have, AIDS, or if your CD4 count is still above 200, normal CD4 count is 500. Tapos pag 200 below, we call that AIDS na. If you start it really early, your CD4 count will never go down below normal. And so you will die with HIV, not of HIV. So you almost restore the life expectancy. In fact, a person who is started on treatment for HIV who has a normal CD4 count will live just as long as somebody who smokes and does not have HIV. So nandun tayo to where HIV and smoking are equivalent
in fact, if you read the news, there's discussion that they're actually working on a vaccine now. That the science may actually be at the sort of at the threshold of being able to do that.
Yeah, so the vaccine is a different story. We've been working on a vaccine since 1984. And because the virus mutates so fast, it's the fastest mutating organism on the planet, actually. The vaccines have been unsuccessful because it actually works. It gives you antibodies against the virus. But by the time you make those antibodies, they were for the old virus. Nag-mutate na siya. Iba na yung virus in your blood. So you're playing catch up, and it actually makes your immune system.
What about gene editing?
Yeah, so they've looked at that. It's early. The virus still gets to adapt to it, but it's something that they're pursuing. Now, the closest thing we have to a vaccine is something called PrEP, or pre-exposure prophylaxis. This used to be a pill that you would take once a day. And if you are highly exposed, again, it's not for everyone. It's 2 out of the 3 drugs that we use to treat people. So it's still antiretrovirals. For highly exposed people, you start it, you take it. As long as you take it regularly, then it decreases the risk of getting HIV by about 90%. But now the recent development is they've actually come up with an injectable form of PrEP that you only need to give every 6 months. And in Africa, in the studies, they gave it to these women who were exposed, and they found that it prevented 100% of the infections over 3 years. That's practically a vaccine. It's a 6-month, it's an every 6-month vaccine which protects you. It also works for men who have sex with men. It decreased HIV acquisition by 96%. These are people who are HIV negative but are highly exposed. And, it's practically a vaccine, but we're still working on a real vaccine.
Okay, I have one last sort of preparatory question. This is all for setting the stage for our action plan, no? In the 80s and in the 90s, when this became a global health emergency, there were so many efforts on education to encourage testing, for protection. But it seems to be been a generational thing na nung pumasok na sa eksena yung mga more effective medicines, parang naging kampante na naman kahit yung mga affected communities. And therefore, you didn't have the big outreach, especially in schools and colleges for testing and modifying behavior. Is this something we're having to grapple with at present?
Yeah, I mean, we're struggling with it as much as anybody. I mean, first of all, HIV has so much stigma attached to it that nobody really wants to talk about it, unfortunately. And so we have to make a big, thing about it. I produced a rock concert in 2009 just to raise money for our clinic, and we had people doing stuff. So you have to do stuff like that. The second is, you're absolutely right, because this is now perceived as a treatable illness. People aren't so scared of it anymore. And that's a wrong attitude. I tell people, okay, fine, we have good treatment, but if you get HIV and you're on treatment, you're also still at much higher risk for cancer, for infections in general, for tuberculosis. A person with HIV, even on treatment, even with suppressed viral loads, is more than 50 times more likely to get TB compared to somebody who does not have HIV. So there are these higher risk things that you get with an HIV diagnosis, even if I can offer you life-saving treatment. So that's one thing. But of course, you have to balance that with a hopeful message that, if you get HIV, we can do something about it. We can give you back your life. You can even have kids the normal way and not infect your spouse if your spouse is negative and your baby's not going to get infected. So we have all these messages about hope. But at the same time, we also have to tell people, this is not a small thing either. Getting an HIV diagnosis, even in this day and age when we have life-saving treatment, is still not something you want to happen to you or to anybody in your family.
Okay, so now the appeal is they want the government to declare a health emergency. What does that do besides freak out a lot of people and potentially drive them into hiding because nakakaya na they feel targeted? So walk us through what we need to do.
Yeah, so part of the problem is, even though we have all these great medications and everything, people still aren't getting tested. And so they'll still end up in the hospital very late. And it's much harder to cure them, and a lot of them will die. So ngayon, the average CD4 count at diagnosis is only 202. So that's very low. People are delaying their diagnosis. If I get someone with a CD4 count above 500, I start them on treatment, sometimes even on the same day, and we see each other every 3 months and then every 6 months after that, and it's fine. And they don't transmit to other people. The problem is, we haven't found more than 40% of people with HIV. And if they don't get tested and they don't get treated, they continue to transmit. In about 8 to 10 years from the time they got infected, they're going to show up in PGH with bad pneumonia, with really bad meningitis, and more than half of them are going to die. And these are people in their 20s, in their, some of them, the youngest one I've taken care of na full-blown na namatay was 18, which means this patient got it when maybe he was 12, 11 years old. So that's the problem. While I have really good meds and it's free, and it's free. The government has been paying for antiretrovirals since the 1990s. And the thing is, these meds are being given to us at very low cost compared to the US. The treatment I give my patients right now that is free from the government, tenofovir, lamivudine, dolutegravir, costs $700 a month in the United States. And we get that at $50 a year because of the way that the advocates have set it up. But the bottom line is, the reason we need some action on this is that we have a solution and people are not accessing it. Because if I put everyone who has HIV on treatment today, that's the end of our pandemic, of our HIV epidemic, because no one will transmit.
Doc, you've been exposed to I've always tell people, you want to see the real Philippines, go to PGH kasi lahat, ang buong lahat ng mga bahagi ng ating lipunan go through PGH. It's
Yeah.
all. So, bakit umaabot sa ganito when you talk to your patients without zeroing in on individuals, because it's not about blame, it's about understanding.
Mm.
What makes them get help too late? What is getting in the way?
So a huge part of it is stigma. There's still a lot of misunderstanding. Everybody still thinks that it's a death sentence. It's not. So that's the first misconception that we have to correct. Number two is nahihiya sila. I mean, it's a very, they feel like they did something wrong. Okay, and of course we're predominantly Catholic country. We're taught that these things should not be happening if you're a good Catholic. So there's a lot of guilt
Yeah.
that comes there. Tapos a lot of it is men who have sex with men. Pa hindi naman lahat. We do have female patients, and so it's very difficult to combat that unless people understand how it's going. That's why we say at the end of the day, what's really important here is education. Because if you tell people, this is a disease, this is not God's judgment on you. I always say nga, if HIV only happened to bad people, all our corrupt politicians should have HIV. So that's what I'm saying, di ba? Hindi naman eh. So it's bad luck is what I say. If a mosquito bites you and you get dengue, and a mosquito bites me and I don't get dengue, does that make you a bad person? Hindi naman, di ba? So that's how I want to approach it. It's a disease that is communicable, it's treatable, and get help while it's early and it's not too late because it's survivable. And even before that, it's preventable. But if
Yeah.
you get it, then we have treatment. You access the treatment, full stop. But then there's a lot of baggage that goes with it. And I think the only way to combat that is really with good education.
Dr. Ethel, one of the strategies we've encouraged in our show is the getting everybody on board, no, whole nation approach. So, how would you recommend that? What are the different in your experience? What are the different sectors that would be very effective in preventing the spread, in addressing the health emergency? What are some of your suggestions? Who are the sectors that we need to mobilize?
Right. So I think, first of all, it's important to get people in the mindset that, HIV is a disease and not a social illness,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
I think that there are still a lot of things going on there. So we always, have good dialogues with church groups. In fact, sa country coordinating mechanism ng Global Fund, CBCP is always there. And like si Father Dan, forget his last name, that he's always there and he understands. But I think that in terms of trying to mobilize people, actually the advocates are very, very active naman eh. But I think what needs to happen at a bigger level is we really need to try to normalize some of these things like testing. And what that means is that we need to have a good education campaign, even at the level of the schools. And it can be age appropriate naman. Kasi part of the pushback that we get from religious groups is what you're telling your kids about that. I mean, number one, these kids see more on the internet than they can ever get in school. If your kids surf the web, they're exposed to porn. They probably know more terms about all these things than any of us. So we have to open our eyes, especially the older people who still think that this is we are protecting our kids by not telling them about sex in the schools. We have to. We protect our children by telling them the right information, which can be distorted if they get it elsewhere. And so we don't call it sex education because we're not educating you to have sex when you get out of the classroom. We call it sexuality education, meaning you understand how sex works. Because even, a 10-year-old and 8-year-old, you at least have to tell them the differences between a male and a female. And also, if your caregiver touches you wherever, you have to say something. It's not too early. okay, as long as we properly contextualize it. I always tell parents, you teach your kids to cross the street, right? Look left, look right, so that they don't get run over by a truck and get killed. It's the same with HIV. HIV can kill them. Why don't you tell them the right information about it so they can protect themselves?
Mm.
Would there be a case to be made for employers or companies to offer incentives to their employees to be tested or to give
Yeah, so I think part of the problem there is even those kinds of, there's a lot of well-intentioned stuff that actually ends up stigmatizing it. Di ba? Yeah, so I think that some of those can be done in a much more sensitive fashion. I think the best model for this is like Love Yourself. So Love Yourself is an NGO and they set up coffee shops. They're not even clinics. They look like coffee shops. You come in for a cup of coffee, you get a free HIV test, you get a free syphilis test, and if you test positive, they link you to care. So very non-threatening. Because we have a lot of well-intentioned stuff. Okay, the free HIV testing today, tapos may truck dyan. Tapos pag may nakita ka lumabas, umiiyak, yun na yun, di ba? So
Yeah.
it's a problem. And then siguro one other thing that's not talked about is something called self-stigma. Okay, self-stigma is when you have HIV, and because of the way our culture is, you feel like you did something wrong. And so you feel like you deserve your diagnosis, and this is a punishment to you, and you should die. That is one of the hardest things to address because they won't come to their visits. In fact, we lose one-third of our patients in the first year of diagnosing them and putting them in treatment. One-third of our patients don't come back. And that's a huge problem.
Yeah.
Even more than drug resistance, which comes out maybe 5 to 10% per year. We lose 30%. And so one of the things that we really have to do is really a very comprehensive educational campaign and also make testing, ngayon meron ng bagong self-testing kits as well, make testing non-intrusive and also have a very good way to link patients into care and to keep them there.
Dr. Edsel, just two questions, no? Do we have data that would determine the percentages in the different socioeconomic classes, no? Number one. Number two, I suppose we have data in terms of regional, no, in the country. Do you have those data available? And is there any significant trend in the data that would be worth looking at, no?
Yeah, so the regional data is available. It's actually in the reports, and we can still see the epicenters are really in the urbanized
Urbanized
centers.
area.
Manila, Cebu, Davao, even Cagayan de Oro, and Bohol, and also actually Boracay, some of the tourist spots as well. But that doesn't necessarily reflect everything. It's possible that people from the provinces are just going to those urban centers because they don't want to be diagnosed in their own backyard. We have that. I have people from Mindanao coming to see me in Manila because if they find out in their own communities, it's going to be very bad for them. So
Yeah.
that's one thing. So I don't know how reliable that data is, but it does cluster around urban centers. Now, as for socioeconomic, we don't have overall data, but I do have granular data. Like for me in PGH, and this is charity stuff. But half of them are college graduates who have work. These are educated people who know to come in. And it's not just call centers because there's been that stigma attached to call centers. No, actually, office workers. I have doctors. I have clergymen, Father, to tell you the truth. And, at that point, I say, this is out of control. Even in the United States, I had priests who were positive. This is something that we can't wish it away. And we can't say, if only everybody listened to what the Bible says it's going to go away. It's not. And that hasn't worked. So we have to do something. Number one is we have to make sure people protect themselves. If, it's great if you can abstain until marriage, I'm all for that. But most people can't. 90% of people can't. And so that 90% needs to know how to protect themselves. Use condoms or PrEP or whatever. And aside from that, if you don't do that and you get sick, you should also know, I need to access care so that I can get treated and I don't spread it to other people and that I will live. So that kind of cascade is very, very important. And we lose a lot of people to that, and they end up in PGH dying of meningitis or bad pneumonia because we failed to do that.
Yeah. Doc, for me, last question. Given the trends, the attitudes, and everything now, the prevalent trends and attitudes, what's the worst case scenario?
Oh, well, the worst case scenario is it's going to keep going up and more people are going to die. The first quarter of 2025, 134 people died. And that's absolutely an underestimate because those are the people we diagnosed. And these are young people. They're in their 20s, 30s. You know, one of the worst things I ever had to do was to pronounce a med student dead on Christmas.
Wow.
I was just talking to him the day before. This is a med student who knows everything about there is to HIV. But because of stigma, he didn't access care. We diagnosed him late. His CD4 count was below 50. And he died on Christmas. On Christmas. I had to tell his family, you know, what am I going to tell them? This could have been prevented. I mean, he shouldn't have died. And he could have been a doctor. On the other hand, I have wonderful stories. I had people who I thought were going to die. And 10 years later, you know, they're abroad, they're vice president of a company and everything. So that's a very, very positive part of it. So there's a tragic part and a positive part. And the difference is getting diagnosed, getting linked to care. And that will save lives. On the other hand, if you don't do that, you're dead.
Yeah.
Stigma kills people. It's not the HIV. I mean, obviously, it's HIV ultimately, but it didn't have to be that way. We always say every single HIV death is preventable, and every single HIV, every single HIV death should not have happened.
Okay.
But I wanted to ask your advice because papasok pa rin ang simbahan dito.
Correct, yeah.
There's been a sort of revolution in attitude, in my opinion, in putting sort of pastoral care ahead of judgments.
Correct.
It's revolutionary.
Yeah.
How can we encourage the different religious communities to internalize this more fully and to work with medicine? Because there's not necessarily a contradiction there.
Yeah. Well, let me sort of discuss a parallel case, no? We're trying to move Dr. Edsel big into anti-stunting. Okay, so which means you need to catch the pregnant mothers, right? But we've had problems identifying them because of the stigma. Nahihiya, no? Because most of the pregnancies are teenage pregnancies, no? And this is where you get the problematic situation. So again, and I think you hit a very good point, Manolo. The church has to become more compassionately pastoral, no? I think it's the only way, correct, Dr. Edsel? It's the only way, no, for the community to welcome them and say, look, it's okay, no? It's okay. There is no judgment, no? I think, Manolo, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but I think uh, now's the right time to do it because there's a certain consciousness of becoming more pastoral. Plus, remember also one of the great contributions of Pope Francis was that he was very, very firm in terms of each diocese coming up with a safeguarding office, safeguarding of youth and vulnerable adults. No, of course that is about sexual abuse and others. No, but I think it can be done. No, that this because this is once Dr. Edsel's tabu yung pedophiles etc. But now the Pope Francis brought it out in the open and created pastoral mechanisms. I think the same strategy, Manolo, can be used. No, from my perspective, no, I think we can do it the same way. No.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't even Pope Francis pa. It was Pope Benedict who said that, you know, there was a theological discussion about whether you should use a condom or not. And if it's going to prevent you from infecting somebody, then that's probably the lesser evil from that standpoint. This is Pope Benedict. This is not Francis. I would have expected Francis to say that, but not Benedict, but he did.
Yes.
Understanding that if you're on treatment, you don't transmit. Understanding that if you're on treatment, you can provide for your family. Understanding also that even for COVID, di ba? The church said, it's your obligation to get that vaccine so that you don't endanger people around you. This
Yeah.
is the same with HIV. And so I think that if somebody is exposed to HIV or gets HIV or they think they might have HIV, to prevent it from spreading to other people, the morally correct response is to get tested. And if
Correct.
you are positive, to get on treatment. So I don't think this is a conflict from a church standpoint. It just has to be framed properly.
Yes, yeah. It has to be, you have to remove the stigma. I think that's the real challenge, no? So, and I think that's where the pastoral approach becomes very, very crucial, no? Okay, so Manolo,
Yeah, if I can wrap up, if I may, with just some thoughts. Something surprised me in this discussion with Doc Edsel. Number one, sa mga nanonood ngayon, pansinin nyo na si Doc Edsel, pinag-uusapan niya malalalim at masakit at masalimuot na mga bagay, but he does it in a relaxed, non-judgmental, informed, and positive way. Sana lahat tayo ganun pagdating sa mga bagay na medyo mahirap pag-usapan dahil alam mo yung we're talking about human behavior and moral questions, but if we're just open and frank about it, we can be adults. And
yeah,
that helps a long way. So I was very impressed by that. Pangalawa, napansin ko rin, and I'm guilty of this to a certain extent, we're all formed by our generation. So for those of us who are old enough to remember when HIV/AIDS became a global health crisis, parang nandun pa rin ang mentalidad natin eh. And what Doc Edsel is reminding us is we've moved on from that. Number one, this is a treatable disease.
yeah,
And this is something na yung mga dating advocacies, like yung dati, everyone get tested, let's bring out the wagons and go into the wagon and get tested. Time has taught us na baka hindi yun ang paraan. There are more gentle, considerate, and therefore effective ways to do it. And finally, yung reminder ni Father Tito na this requires a whole of nation approach. For those of you who are watching who know an influencer, maybe you should get them in touch with Doc Edsel and other groups that he can refer you to. Use your influence for something.
yeah,
For those of you who have a friend or a relative who's a congressman, mayor, senator, governor, bokal, use your influence to remind them that are you aware about what's going on with HIV/AIDS in our country? If you're an educator, follow the lead of Father Tito. Judge less, care more, work with the person who's confused, filled with doubt and shame, to bring them to the light.
yeah.
And for all of us, we just wanted to thank Dr. Edsel because alam mo, one thing we've always encountered sa Proyektong Pilipino is that there are people who are working day in and out, not for riches and not for recognition, but out of service. And he is one of them, and for what it's worth, we admire him for that.
Yeah. Ako rin, Dr. Edsel, thank you for your passion and dedication. Ano? So, and we wish you all, and please let us know how we can help. No? Most certainly, the whole of nation approach is what we've always advocated. No? So, maraming salamat, Dr. Edsel. So,
Yeah,
okay.
siguro, yeah, one thing I probably just want to end with on my part is one thing that keeps me going with this advocacy is that every single number that you see on that HIV list na positive, sabihin na 57, is a person who has a mother, a father, people who care about them, and would be very sad if they died. Diba?
Yeah.
So from my standpoint, that humanizes it. That could be my kid. So I think if you take that mindset, you will be a lot more compassionate. And this will be a lot easier to do.
So, thank you again, Dr. Edsel Manolo. Thank you very much. Mga kaproyekto, ito po ay isang napaka-tabu no, na topic, pero napakahalagang mapag-usapan natin out in the open. Dahil nasa pagtanggap na ito ay isang mahalagang ah, challenge na kailangan pagbigyan pansin natin na again using the whole of nation approach. So maraming salamat ulit Dr. Edsel Manolo at sa ating mga proyekto, maraming salamat po. Ito po ang Proyekto Pilipino.